So as you all probably know, Alex Bowman won't be racing this weekend at Phoenix because he was diagnosed with vertigo after he actually got replaced last week as well by Snider in the 48 car at COTA. So Anthony Alfredo will be filling in for Bowman this week at Phoenix. And today we're going to be taking this opportunity to look at some other fill-in substitute drivers throughout NASCAR's history. This will include drivers that, of course, started the race filling in, and then drivers that stepped in mid-race for a driver swap. So there's going to be a lot of examples on here, maybe more than you actually would have thought, but this has happened a lot of times during NASCAR's history. So let's get straight into this video with NASCAR's substitute drivers. Like I said before, Anthony Alfredo is filling in for Alex Bowman in the 48 car this weekend at Phoenix Raceway, but he's experiencing the same type of symptoms mid-race at Circuit of the Americas last week, and actually Snider ended up stepping into the 48 car last week with about maybe 20 or so laps to go. Finished the race. It was his first career Cup Series appearance, and we're going to see, of course, Alfredo in the car this week, but Snider in the car last week. He was actually working for Fox Sports at the time. I think it was a pit road spotter or something for Jamie Little, and got told to step into the race car and finish the race, which he did. That's a hell of a way to make your first Cup Series appearance there for Snider in the 48. So our next driver on this list is actually a current full-time Cup Series driver, that being Ross Chastain, who made 3 starts for Roush Fenway Racing back in 2020 at Las Vegas, Fontana, and Phoenix after Ryan Newman's horrific crash. He was usually the driver of the 6th car that season back in 2020 in the Daytona 500 that put him out, which would have been for a lot longer until the COVID pandemic, of course, happened after the Phoenix race, and we were put on hold until May when the Newman was actually able to get back into the race car. Ross Chastain ran okay in those 3 races, best finish coming with a 17th place run at Fontana. It was definitely interesting because he was driving a Chevy in the Xfinity Series for Kaulig that year, and then he had to actually ask Chevy if it was okay for him to drive a Ford. Obviously, they said yes, and he was able to fill in for Ryan Newman for those 3 races back in 2020. Unfortunately for Alex Bowman, this weekend in Phoenix won't be the first time he's going to be missing a race due to some sort of medical issue. First of all, back in 2022, he got a concussion in a crash at Texas, and Noah Gragson was actually tapped to drive the 48 car at Talladega, the Charlotte Roval, Las Vegas, and Homestead Miami Speedway in the 48 for Hendrick Motorsports. This was the first time Alex was out of the 48. Alex Bowman would eventually return it in Martinsville with 2 races to go in the season, but Gragson ran relatively well, finished 11th at Las Vegas for his best finish of the season. This was back when he was driving for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, and ultimately did a nice job filling in for Alex Bowman. But unfortunately for Alex Bowman, missing a race here in the Cup Series isn't even the second time it's happened. He was also sidelined the very next year in 2023 with a back injury after a sprint car accident, so Josh Berry actually ended up stepping to the 48 car. Berry was already driving the 9 car that season for Chase Elliott, who was injured in a skiing accident, which we'll talk about later, his fill-in drivers that season as well. Berry ran at Dover, Darlington, and I believe the All-Star race as well. Now, back in the early days of the Gen 6 car, Denny Hamlin actually was involved in a couple of different incidents that unfortunately left him with injuries, one of them being at Martinsville that season where he had an eye injury he was dealing with, and Mark Martin ended up coming out of retirement to drive the 11 car for 1 race there at Martinsville Speedway. He actually ended up with a top 10 finish and finishing 10th in the race, even with this tire issue that he had going on in 2013. He did run a couple other races that season, I believe, filling in for Tony Stewart. Only ran 1 race in the 11 car for Denny Hamlin, because Denny only missed that 1 race because of the injury. But Mark Martin definitely showed that he still had it in good equipment. Now, speaking of veterans coming out of retirement to fill in for other drivers, you got to talk about Jeff Gordon in 2016, filling in for Dale Earnhardt Jr. in multiple races in the 88 car after Jr. was left with a concussion. Of course, Gordon retired the season earlier, long-time driver of the 24 car, as obviously everyone knows. He won a race in Martinsville with a few races to go in the season, made the championship 4, then he hung it up, and then came back in 2016, finished a best 6th at Martinsville. He also had this really badass moment with Tony Stewart after finishing top 15 in that season's Brickyard 400. Of course, they would both go on to never run another Cup Series race after that season, so very cool moment between those 2 veterans. Now, Jeff Gordon wasn't the only driver to sub for Dale Jr. that year, and somehow this is going to go back to Alex Bowman again, who of course subbed in the 88 car, which is before he got his full-time ride with Hendrick Motorsports in 2016, then a little bit in 2017, I believe, at the Clash as well, because he was eligible for the Clash and Dale Jr. wasn't that year. He actually ended up most notably winning the pole at Phoenix and absolutely dominating the race, until this happened.
Bowman trying He gets into the 20. The 20 slides. The 18 goes by. The caution hasn't come out yet. Now it does.
And after leading 194 laps, Alex Bowman would have to settle for 6th place, but this definitely helped him get the Hendrick ride, which he still has to this day. Now, this one's an example of a driver that actually had a mid-race driver change, so I don't even know where to start with this one. Carson Hocevar was injured in a crash at Gateway in the Truck Series back in 2022 when he was full-time in the trucks. He actually went in the next race and won the pole at Sonoma with a broken something, and then actually crashed the truck after winning the pole, and then to go do a backup truck, started the race, but eventually the pain was too much for him, understandably so. It's a road course, and Daniel Suarez ended up stepping into the 42 car. This was actually a day or two before Suarez's Cup Series first victory at Sonoma that same weekend. He finished 6th in the Truck Series, but absolutely wild scenes down there. Probably one of the most wild ones we have in this video, and especially it being a mid-race driver change. Just a wild weekend for that whole 42 team. But this one is probably the most notable. So, of course, back in the 2015 Daytona Xfinity Series race, Kyle Busch was injured in a crash, broke his legs, and had to, of course, miss the Daytona 500 and a lot of other races after that. Matt Crafton stepped into the 18 Cup car for that season's Daytona 500 and finished 18th. Then David Reagan stepped into that race car and had 9 Cup Series starts that season in the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing. Actually had a best top 5 finish at Martinsville with finishing 5th place. Then the keys to the 18 car got handed over to yet another driver. That driver being Erik Jones, as he made his Cup Series debut at Kansas. Ran really well, but unfortunately ended up being taken out in a wreck and ultimately finished 40th in that race. That was one race before Kyle Busch came back. Ultimately, he ended up missing 11 Cup Series races that season, and you all know what happened after that. He would go on to win 5 races that season in his starts, and of course, most notably, the 2015 Cup Series Championship, one of the most controversial championships in NASCAR history, but I guess you can maybe thank David Reagan, Matt Crafton, and Erik Jones for setting up his very fast race car at the end that ultimately got him the championship in Homestead. Speaking on a little bit of a more recent example is Connor Zilisch in the 2025 Xfinity Series summer race in Daytona. Of course, after winning in Watkins Glen, he fell off his race car in Victory Lane. He broke his collarbone and then was not sidelined for the next race in Daytona. Started it, but there was too much pain to continue, and Parker Kligerman stepped into the 88 Junior Motorsports car, and the rest was history.
There's the white flag. Next flag ends the race. Algaier getting with it down low. Sandy Smith pushing Kligerman outside. Parker's in a good position with the push from the 8 right there. Long ways, though, back to the start-finish line. Look how far out he is. I think it's going to work out. 3 wide behind him. There goes Sanchez. Hill pushing through. 3 and 4 for the final time. They're crashing behind the leaders. We stay green for now. There's the caution. Parker Kligerman out front. Kligerman for Connor Zilisch is going to take the checkers here at Daytona. Unbelievable.
That's a pretty good record, 3 and 4.
Awesome job, Parker.
This is definitely the best you could possibly do as a driver filling in, and especially stepping in mid-race for Parker Kligerman there. Gets the win. Was his second win in NASCAR at Daytona that year, but somehow both don't count to his official name, of course. Technically, it counts. Connor Zilisch wins that Daytona race, and he won the truck race earlier that season, but was disqualified. So 2 wins at Daytona, but none actually official to his name, Parker Kligerman, that year. Our final 2 ones on this list are both going to be from Hendrick Motorsports, which I feel like has taken up half this video. But, of course, Jimmie Johnson was in his final Cup Series season back in 2020. When, unfortunately, he caught COVID and was forced to miss the Brickyard 400 that year. They then signed Justin Allgaier to drive the 48 car for the Brickyard 400 for that 1 week that Jimmy had to miss. As you can see, it didn't go so well. Was involved in an early race crash, a huge one on pit road that actually injured one of Ryan Blaney's crew members, unfortunately. He was taken out of the race from this damage and was ultimately not able to continue. Jimmy returned the next week at Kentucky. Our final one is, of course, like I said, from Hendrick Motorsports. And back in 2023, as you all know, Chase Elliott was injured in a snowboarding accident, had to miss a bunch of races. Josh Berry filled in most of the races he missed, actually had a best finish of second that season at Richmond during his little sample every Hendrick car in the field that year. But of course, at Circuit of the Americas, he did not race the 9 car, and Jordan Taylor made his NASCAR Cup Series debut that week. Taylor, of course, is a very well-known IMSA driver, so it was not too shocking to see him be signed for one road course race, but maybe just kind of out of the blue here. He actually qualified very well in 4th place in the 9 car at Circuit of the Americas. Unfortunately, fell back to 24th, still finished the race under his own power. The race also gave us this pretty hilarious Chase Elliott moment where he was interviewed by Fox during the live broadcast of the Cup race at his home. It was definitely a pretty weird look as you saw the 9 car, even on the ticker, running inside of the top 10 when Chase was in his home watching. Anyways, that will wrap it up of this tour of NASCAR's substitute drivers in the middle of the race or just coming to the race knowing they're going to substitute. Definitely a wild experience here. So many drivers that you don't probably know about substituting that actually did substitute. There's still a lot more examples to cover, so comment down below if you want a part 2. I would definitely make that because there's still a lot of examples even on the top of my head that we could cover in this type of video. So that will do it for tonight, and I will see you guys in the next one.